Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers and the Hawks tonight. I went on a little. So somebody asked me real quick, where are you? Like, basketball analytics aren't seemingly quite as overtaking. I guess threes are better than two is the one, big thing that I guess would be analytical. But how? I feel like football, basketball, baseball. Where is it kind of on the landscape of the battle of analytics versus the quote unquote basketball scouts?
I guess it depends on what kind of circle you're looking at. I mean, there are plenty of things. I mean, just look at net rating, offensive rating, defensive rating, where everything's judged per 100 possessions. I mean, you have like true shooting percentage, little things like that here and there. And just I think with basketball, it's a couple things, and not to demean people who watch basketball for a living, like even myself, but when you watch basketball, it kind of is what it is, if that makes sense. Like when you're watching football, there's just so much going on. There 11 guys on 11 guys, so much strategy and so much involved. With basketball, a lot of it is just 5-on-5, and it's my guys versus your guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to kind of identify things. And I think for the most part, when you look at the analytics of basketball, most of them match what you see. You know what I mean? I think, and maybe in other sports, I think. Well, I think that's the criticism of like the hockey analytics. I think the biggest criticism is that it seems like the hockey analytics don't always match what you see, whereas I think basketball more so perhaps in other sports it matches what you see.
Well, like Alec Boehm hits a ball last night, 106 mile per hour exit velo, okay? Which again, I'm not fine, do what you want with 106 exit velo. I don't know what to do with that. His expected batting average when you hit the ball 106 miles an hour is he's expected to hit 800. Well, that's fine and dandy, but he's not hitting the 106 miles an hour every single time he's up. So the one time he hit it 106 miles an hour, he lined it to short, and the shortstop caught it. So I don't know what to do with a expected batting average. Now, the ball hit the left. It was 101 exit velo, and his expected batting average on a ball hit at 101 miles an hour is 770. And yet he's 0 for 2 to show for these two things. So I don't know what to do with that data. But basketball, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm not as fine-tuned with what analytics they're using in basketball. And if you look at some of these numbers, like, what the heck? Because expected batting average to me is one that I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but to an extent, it's stuff that we already knew, but maybe just as a way to quantify it. You could tell, okay, Alec Boehm squared a couple balls up, and they just happened to be hit right at people. You probably don't need an analytic to tell you that. You know what I mean? You could see, yes, he hit the ball very hard, but he just happened to hit it right at somebody. That's baseball. That has been happening since the inception of the sport.
Right.
So I think it's one of those things where, I mean, I guess it just gives you more to back up. Listen, he's squaring the ball up and he's making good contact. It's just not falling. But I mean, I guess, I guess to an extent it backs it up. But yeah, basketball is weird. And I do think, but there are some kind of, I find that it's become a thing with this defensive player of the year argument with Rudy Gobert and Ben Simmons. If you look at a lot of the advanced stats, they kind of back up Rudy Gobert, but there's a bunch of stuff that leaves out because Rudy Gobert's a rim protector. So that's what he does. So there's a lot of really great stats to quantify how good someone is at protecting the rim and affecting shots. With Ben Simmons, because he guards the other, the opponent's best player a lot, because he is really good off the ball as well. It's hard to quantify kind of how much of an impact he's making because some of those analytic stats aren't as kind to him because he's guarding the best player on the other side all night. So I think to that extent, sometimes with in all sports, I think it's, yes, analytics, I think, are a tool. They are useful. I will never say they are not. But I do think you also have to look with your eyes and see what's in front of you and account for that other context as well.
Right. I also, I think if you asked all fans to just go back and have a simpler time, there's too much information. Your roster against my roster. Who's got more talent? Let's just go play the game. Not whose front office has more information, whose computer spit out better stats. Let's just start over and just start from scratch. Who's better? Whose roster's better? I think fans would sign back up for a kinder, simpler time. But let's look at tonight because I want to get your opinion on, we got to see George Hill the other night for the first time with Ben Simmons. So that was nice. We kind of talked about, like, would they end the game with Hill, start games with Curry? So Monday night against Oklahoma City, we got to see them together. Did we learn enough in one game to say, I really like the way these guys might look together?
No, flat out no. I mean, it's going to take some time because, and I also, I don't know at what point Doc Rivers is going to kind of, I mean, it's been tough because of the injuries, because so many guys have been in and out of the lineup. But I'm curious, at what point does Doc Rivers say, okay, I've seen enough of these guys. I know what all these guys can do. Now I want to look at, get a preview of what this might look like in the playoffs. We might never see that. He might not do that at all. He might wait until the playoffs to kind of show that. But I think for now it's going to be hard because he likes Doc. I disagree with him on it, but he loves those all bench lineups. So I don't think they're going anywhere for the next, however many games. I don't foresee that happening. So until that does, you're probably not going to see a ton of Ben Simmons and George Hill. Now, I think George Hill, and Doc has said this all along, and I agree. George Hill is 34 years old. He's been in this league a long time. We know what he is. We're not, we don't have to discover anything about George Hill. We know what he's capable of. So you don't necessarily have to see him in those situations. And then on top of that, because George Hill has played with so many different players, because he's played with a Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's played with a LeBron James, and he's also been at spots where he's been the point guard and he's kind of ran the show. So it's not a guy, he can fit in anywhere. He can fit in any lineup. He can shoot, he can dribble, he can pass. He can play on the ball, can play off the ball. So I don't think we need to see as much, and we might not. But I'm overall, Mike, I'm really encouraged by what I think he can bring on both ends of the floor. And I, like you talked about the idea of him closing games. I think that's very much going to be in play once the playoffs start, or even as the season closes, when maybe some of these games are a little tougher, when they play some tougher teams. But yeah, I would say what I've learned is that George Hill is still pretty good. He can play, and he's going to help this team.
Yeah, and I know that the stretch, I think Michael Kasky-Blomain was on with us yesterday, and he wrote the piece at CBS that said they have the easiest schedule down the stretch here. Now, the Hawks have been kind of interesting. They play them tonight and tomorrow. These are really two of the toughest games they have left. So it feels, anyway, that Doc could at least try to play with some rotations these final, 10 games. What is it? 9?
Yeah, something like that. But no, I mean, so with the Hawks, it's tough because you're right. They have been playing better, but right now they're so banged up. I mean, yeah, Trae Young's obviously not going to play. They're missing their 2 young wings in Hunter and Reddish. I think Herter's doubtful tonight. Bogdanovich is questionable. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of what we saw earlier this season when the Sixers had to go to Atlanta with basically Joel Embiid and the Bluecoats and try to win a game, and that didn't work out so well for them. And the Sixers, you look at and all they have is Mike Scott is questionable. So they're coming in this thing pretty close to full strength. So you're right that I think this would have been a nice test. This would have been a couple games to kind of get that experience. But at the same time too, Mike, I think after that losing streak, I think, getting that easy win against the Thunder and then maybe beating up on the Hawks for 2 games might do them some good, kind of get them back in the flow, get them winning again, so that when they do take on, there is a game with the Heat left. I struggle. I can't remember everything on the top of my head, but they do have some games against. For the most part, it is easy. I mean, that quite point blank. It is a very easy schedule.
They got Hawks, Spurs, Bulls. They play 5 games next week. It's Spurs,
Bulls.
Bulls.
Spurs are still hanging in there. Yeah.
Spurs, Bulls, Rockets, Pelicans, Pistons, then Pacers, Heat, Magic.
Yes, I mean the Pacers are still playing for something. They're still playing hard. They've been playing a little bit better. The Spurs aren't an easy team to play against typically if they're healthy. So I mean, you're gonna and again the Heat. I mean the Heat's they haven't been playing very good basketball at all.
Well, you couldn't do anything with the Pelicans the last time you faced them. I know they're not very good.
Pelicans have been playing much better ever since they moved Zion to that point guard role. They've been playing better. So there are going to be games that are going to be. Listen, they're games they should win, but they're not. They're tricky. They're not easy. They're not like Oklahoma City. They're not going to be like that. They're going to be games where you're going to have to show up.
Oklahoma City won at Boston last night.
Yeah, it's true. Fair point. Well, I think that had maybe a little bit more to do with maybe perhaps the Boston Celtics taking them a bit lightly, and the Sixers kind of being on a 4-game losing streak and not taking anybody lightly at that point. But yeah, well, the Celtics. I mean. it's funny because the Celtics had won a few games, and I saw some people were kind of like, "Oh, look out for the Celtics," but I'm sorry, they are what they are to me. The Celtics. I don't think they're a very good basketball team. As one of my former colleagues noted, I thought it was actually a good way to put it. They don't make like they're not hard to play against. They're not hard to match up against. They don't make it hard for them to play against. They have Brown, they have Tatum, and they're great. They're elite scorers, elite wing players, but they just don't really have any, like, you talk about an identity. Like the Sixers have an identity. They are a defensive minded team. That's how they're going to win games. If they go far, it'll be because they are playing elite level defense. With the Celtics, it's like I don't like if Tatum or Brown get hot, that's the only chance they have to win games, I feel like. So, and like same with like the Heat this year, like they kind of have that, they were really close chemistry wise. They played hard, they scrapped. You haven't seen that this year. So I think that's one thing with the Sixers that has been good is that they've kind of established an identity as, when we're right, we're playing good defense, and that's how we're going to win games. We're gonna punch you in the mouth. We're gonna play good, hard, physical defense.
Talking with Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the 76ers, of course, inside the Sixers here as they're playing the Hawks tonight. You can hear the game on 97.3 ESPN. And then again, no, it's not tonight. It's Thursday night. I'm sorry. Thursday night, tomorrow, they play the Hawks back-to-back Thursday and Friday. So they're up against the draft. Both. No. They're playing tonight and then Friday.
Correct.
Yes, sorry. Tonight
it's all right.
and Friday, they play the Hawks. I see. The draft is tomorrow, and I thought the Sixers were up against the draft. They are on Friday, not Thursday. There's where I got a little confused.
Correct.
Tobias Harris down the stretch here. He had missed a couple games with the knee. He wasn't anything special the other night. You anticipate them kind of like pulling back on him a little bit here?
No, I mean I think he's in pretty good shape. I think they are just. Really easing him in, I think. And the Thunder game, he was decent. I mean, he was like, nothing. But then again, like, you couldn't glean much from that game anyway because they kind of just crushed him. But I mean, I think he kind of filled the stat sheet. He had like 11 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 steals or something crazy like that. So he did impact the game. He did play pretty decently. But it's going to be, I think he's healthy, which is the most important thing. I think the knee is feeling better. I think now it's just a matter of he missed a bunch of games, so he's just got to get that rhythm back.
I'm just trying to see, like, if they are going to do what a lot of these teams are doing and just kind of, like, pick their spots with guys, or do they understand, hey, we're now a game and a half back. If we want that 1 seed, they can sit guys out. We can't afford to.
I think it's got to be a balance, and it's not easy. It's not fun,
right.
But I think that's the deal. I think it's got to be a balance of, like, to your point, picking spots for certain guys at certain times. If a guy maybe isn't feeling 100%, just don't play him. That might just be, and I think that's kind of been the way Doc Rivers has treated most of the season. Like with Joel Embiid, especially, like if you're not 100%, do not play. And I think that served them well in the long run. I think it's going to serve them well in the long run because right now, knock on wood, all the guys right now are pretty healthy. They are in pretty, like, yes, they had that, the 4-game losing streak was rough. They missed a bunch of guys. But right now we're closing it on the last part of the season, and they're at full strength right now. So I mean, I think from that standpoint, I think Doc's kind of managed that well. But yeah, it's going to be a balance because as we've discussed ad nauseum, it's if those guys aren't playing, if those guys aren't 100, not even if they're not playing, if they're not at 100%, if they're not in the best possible shape they can be in, the 1 seed doesn't matter. So yes, they want the 1 seed. The 1 seed is important. I don't want to diminish that. If they can get it, it would be huge. But it's much bigger. The health thing is way bigger. And I think Doc Rivers knows that. And I think he's just going to have to keep that balance going from now till the end.
All right, 2 quickies for Paul Hudrick here. One, somebody asked me the other night, can Paul Reed, take some of the Mike Scott minutes? Now, Mike Scott might not play tonight. Would we anticipate Reed has a shot to do something over these 10 games to show the coaching staff that he deserves some minutes in the playoff? I can't imagine that they would give him playoff minutes, but you tweeted the other night. I was laughing. I said, Paul Reed's fun. I said, all these Paul Reeders are going to start coming out, man.
Yeah, I mean, Doc Rivers flat out told us.
That was a month ago, though.
Yeah, I know, but I don't see what has possibly changed between now and then. I get it. I mean, listen, I love Paul Reed. I think he's so fun. I was happy when they drafted him. I think he's got a ton of potential. But I don't think he's ready to be an NBA contributor in the playoffs for a contender. I don't think that is the case. And listen, I don't like to take Mike Scott's minutes. I don't think Mike Scott's going to have minutes in the playoffs. So he's not taking anyone's minutes. I think more likely you're going to see more guards. Like you're going to see, like, I think Doc would rather kind of play it out and like mix up his lineups to where Shake Milton, George Hill, Matisse Thybulle, and Furkan Korkmaz are all on, and then of course Dwight Howard are all higher on the totem pole than Mike Scott right now. And I think Doc Rivers will manage to find a way to make that work where Mike Scott's not even going to play in the playoffs. Yeah. So I'm not as hung up on that idea, and I don't think Doc is either. As far as like I need to have a 4, especially like you look at it too, Mike. Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons are going to be playing 35 to 40 minutes a night.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that 4 role will kind of be filled between those two guys for a good chunk of the game. Because it's not necessarily about offensively who plays the 4. It's about who guards the 4.
Really interested.
So as long as
really interested to see how they handle the Danny Green, Matisse Thybulle minutes in the playoffs.
For sure. I mean, for Thybulle, I think it's going to come down to, is he making shots?
Shot the ball well the other night.
He did. And look, his shot looks good. I don't know what it looks like maybe his lower body. He's changed a little bit. He's getting a little bit more arc underneath him. He looks a little bit more, he's not rushing it. Like it's still a good quick release, but he's not rushing it. It looks like he's under more control. So I've been pretty encouraged by the way he shot the basketball, but I think Danny Green does so many little things, veteran things that maybe you don't pick up on when you watch the game at normal speed or you're just casually watching, where if you go back and really critique the game and look at it, so many little things Danny Green does, whether it's ball, moving off the ball, whether it's little defensive stuff like help defense, rotation defense. Clearly Matisse Thybulle is, if it's not Ben Simmons, then Matisse Thybulle is their most impactful defender. So I think you need to find a way to get both of them on the floor a great deal. And I think Doc Rivers, listen, to me, that's a good problem to have 2 guys that are so good at what they do that you have to figure out a way to get them both on the floor. That is a very good problem to have. And let's be real, Mike, that's not something the Sixers have had in recent years, that they've had this slew of options they can go to off the bench. So to have that, I think, is a good problem.
All right, Sixers tonight against the Hawks, 97.3 ESPN. The coverage starts at 7 o'clock. Kevin McCormick at 6:40 tonight with a live report as the Sixers and the Hawks will play tonight and Friday. He's Paul Hudrick back on Friday as they'll play the Hawks on Friday, too. I got it right. All right, Paul, we'll talk to you then, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks, man.
All right, don't forget McCormick tonight at 6:40 with the report, and Paul is back for Inside the Sixers on Friday's show. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.